Well, I'm William Guadeloupe, who joined the credit union in 1949 after leaving school. I was 17 and a half years of age at the time. I became secretary of the credit union in 1950. Served for 2 years. Became vice president in 1952. Served for 2 years. And became president in 1954. And served for 12 consecutive years. After which I was able to take over the position of treasurer manager of the credit union because of the problem that we had in terms of the continuity with the former treasurer and also with the coming of the company, Texaco, coming in the organization. So I had to get rid of the position that I was holding in order to continue as a member of the board and also as treasurer manager of the credit union. Because in those days the treasurer had to manage in that since you started the organization from very small, it was not a question of having any business at the time, a matter of developing funds so that you'd be able to start business later on. So you needed the treasurer doing that work because they couldn't have a staff or anything like that. Unfortunately, I had a business training into final accounts and stuff. So it was easy for me to be able to take the position as treasurer after serving in the position as president. Monty Morenzi was like the founding father of the Athletes Credit Union. And he was my mentor as well. As a matter of fact, he used to visit our home. And I was a young leader in the village. I was leader in the football, the cricket, village council, and whatever else there was to be done in the village. There had 3 young fellows there who were teenagers, and we were the leaders in the village. So when he came and visited our home and started a conversation with our cooperative, he was actually trying to see if he can get me interested in it, so that they would be able to have a young arm in the movement to encourage the young people, because in those days young people more looked towards the game that they had to play, the sport, or the fact that they had to go to weekend. They had no interest in things that old people were taking part in. So when the credit union actually started, it was like an old people thing. So in order to get young people, you had to get a young person who had an interest in development and to see whether they would be talked into this. So coming and talking at home with me, he impressed me by giving me some of the historical development in Ireland and in England and these places. I learned a lot about Pat Gallagher. I learned about Eileen and these other guys, from the Jardin and all these guys, and the work that they did in order to develop their country. I was fascinated, and I thought, he loaned me a lot of books. And I was an avid reader in those days as well. And I was very impressed. So he thought that he could get me in the company. He asked me to apply for a job, although I was underage. But because although I was underage, I was reasonably developed because I used to take copious exercise and so on. And as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, I was already over 150, 160 pounds, right? And I was 6 feet tall already by 18, you know? So it was a matter of getting me in the company and getting the young people in the area involved in the cooperative. And it worked, because he used to take me out with him when visiting any of the credit unions in the area, right, to talk to the young people. And in those days, I mean, even now I still like talking. So I used to be very proud of the fact that I was given the opportunity to talk to the young people about something that I believe was really good for them. And again, I had that background, sports. So it was easy with sport and cooperative, those two together. And I, as a young person who was a developer in my village, it just fit in well for me. And I decided that I would want nothing else but to help to develop cooperative and develop sports as my future in life. And that is what it turned out to be. So I was able to develop the credit union, develop myself in the credit union, develop sports. I was able to be a national coach in sport. I was able to play cricket at a reasonably high level. I became a national coach for over 20 years. I served on the cricket board. I was able to make the breakaway from Queen's Park, where Queen's Park controlled all the cricket in Trinidad. I was able to make the breakaway that country people should be able to get an opportunity to play as batsmen. The only opportunity Queen's Park allowed country people to take part in cricket was if you were a good fast bowler, extraordinary, that they didn't have in town. Or you had an extraordinary spin bowler like Ramadan that didn't have in town. So you, apart from Buxton Peters and Ken Babb and Ramadan and these fellas, nobody had to play for Trinidad from the country area. But what I did, and I probably would put it up to what it is worth, I got one of the young fellas who was ignored, overlooked, and got the Archbishop's brother, who was a friend of mine, who operated at the level of West Hall League, which he was secretary and I was vice president. Send this youngster to live in Diego Martin. He made arrangements for Bernard Julian's parents that this boy stay with them and go to school, and he made arrangements for him to get into St. Mary's College because he used to be going to Point Fortin Intermediate School, right? He just started. And the rest is history. He stayed there, and he used to be the top player in Port of Spain with the school cricket program. And as a result of that, they thought this was a genius, something extraordinary that they found. So they promoted him, but they didn't know he was from South. Eventually, they called him for trial at the age of 14. Played him against the Tobago side, which was an annual game to look for Tobago players. They had their top players. And he made it, I think, 45 minutes at the age of 40. They called him for the national program trials the next year when he was 15. And he made a reasonable score again. And they decided to play him as the youngest batsman ever to play for Trinidad in that year, 1949. I'm not 1969. And it turned out that he made 69 on his debut against the top-class bowlers from the islands. And if he was not a showy kind of fellow, he might have made 100. But he wanted so much to show how much shots he could make out of one. He out doing something I told him never to do. If you see off-break bowlers bowling outside the off-stick and they're regularly, constantly on a spot, don't try to late cut them. And after he hit him a square cut for 4, he hit him a thing for, and he found that he had beaten him so badly He did exactly, and as God would allow it, ball popped, he got caught in the gully. 69. I mean, completely over the bowling area, totally over. So that is about it. So the sport and the cooperative became my thing. Now I didn't give out the name of the player, but when you hear the name Richard Gabriel, you realize he was from Chandyville, deep south, but he stayed with Bernard Julian and they and developed the cricket from up there. He played for Trinidad, and he got one game for West Indies. He went to Australia. He and I think Master Blaster fell out because he dropped a catch. The rest is history.